Shane Parmalee. About 18 years ago, my sister-in-law was diagnosed with schizophrenia. We moved her back from Texas to my sister's house, who lived in El Cajon, where she lived for almost a year. She refused to get mental health treatment, which is often the case. And my in-laws decided to use a tough love approach, and this led to her being homeless in El Cajon. She lived in the neighborhood and slept in the bushes until she disappeared. No one heard from her for about 9 months, and then she finally called. Back then, people still had phone numbers memorized. When we finally picked her up, she had somehow made her way to downtown San Diego. She had lost over 80 pounds. Her skin was hanging off of her from starvation and malnutrition, and now I see why she was forced out of El Cajon. After several years in both hospitals and group homes, I invited her to live with us because she just needed a family. She took her meds and she had a lot of issues, but she made a lot of progress in the 3 years she lived with us. She did really well for about 6 years, and then she secretly stopped taking her medication because she thought she had gotten better, and she just wanted to be like everyone else, and it didn't work. She ended up back in the hospital in group homes. My other sister-in-laws had since moved to Arizona, and they all agreed that she should move out there and be in a group home out there where she could be closer. Within 2 years, one sister had moved to Colorado and the other one had passed away. 2 years ago, my sister-in-law walked out of her group home and has been missing ever since. She's officially missing in Arizona. So wherever she is, I hope that people are sharing food with her. And since I can't give her food, I will continue to do what the Bible taught me and I have done my whole life, and that is I will feed the hungry. I'd like to invite everyone who still loves thy neighbor to join us this Sunday at Wells Park and to share food with whoever would like it, not based on whether or not they have an address. I find this an extremely scary overreach of the government. And I find it just so insulting that you're collecting food for the homeless and you are running it through a middleman. It would be illegal for all those people coming to the Mother Goose Parade to give that food directly to a person that they see that needs it. And I don't think you thought this all the way through. I get it. If there's too much trash, put out more trash cans. You're never going to have enough housing for the homeless. You're never going to have everybody in a perfect world where they have to come get help. That's wonderful that you guys have so many programs. If I'm mentally ill I think 25% of your population, the homeless population, are veterans. I think it's really odd. Like, you have Veteran of the Year. That's your homeless population. And you're saying nobody can prep hot food and deliver it? And I just really am begging you to reconsider this because I'll be out here breaking it. And I hope a lot of other you don't even have to be Christian, just good people, good Americans come out and break this ban. Thank you.
Ma'am, can I ask you a question? You seem very reasonable. I just want to ask, do you understand why we're doing this?
I think I understand the reason that you're using to justify it. I don't think that it's a valid reason. Because when I've talked with and thank you, Mr. McClellan, for calling me. I appreciate that. When it comes down to it, the issue is the spread of hepatitis A, and you're worried about the point of contact of contamination. And so my question is, how is the pastors, number one, they're not getting the 4 to 5 touches now going out into the community. You're expecting people with mental health or addiction issues or just who now have PTSD from being, or because they're veterans or being homeless, to just walk into a church. Those ministers aren't out there making those personal connections with people who then trust them to listen to them, to invite them in. You're shutting down that whole opportunity. And what you're saying, it's not a true thing. If they prep the food there and give it versus prep the food and deliver it in the park, there's no...
No, I understand your point of view. I just want to make sure you understand a couple of things. One is it's about the hepatitis. Just I listen to you. The second, it's a temporary situation.
Temporary, so actually what it projected is to 1 to 2 years, if we're lucky, 2 years. That's what Google it. This is easy information to find.
It's going to be as long as the hepatitis epidemic
which continues. Usually takes 1 to 2 years.
Yes, so be about.
Look, find it.
If you can let me finish.
Go ahead.
And then the third one is, there's no lack of feeding. What we're asking the people that are doing these organized feedings in the parks to do is to bring it into a kitchen. Bring it into one of the many places that have kitchens.
So they prepped it in a kitchen, and whether they put it on a plate and hand it to a person in their church, or put it on a plate and hand it to them in the park,
to be completely honest,
when does it get contaminated?
Yeah, because it comes out to the park, they take boxes, they put it on the grass, the same grass that people have been defecating on.
Aren't we handing it to people?
Hepatitis is a disease that is transmitted from fecal to oral contact.
I'm a teacher.
So you're putting it in the same places where people are congregating and not using toilet services.
I didn't realize the ministers were all throwing the food on the ground before they gave it to people.
You know, if we can have a reasonable conversation, that'd be great.
I'm just listening to your facts.
What I mean by reasonable is there's no reason to be sarcastic and angry. But we're trying to prevent...
I think it's funny you're saying the ministers are putting the food on the ground before they give to the people. If that's the issue, then please stop doing that. Just hand it to them.
We have pictures of people putting boxes of food on the ground. They're not following basic food handling stuff, and we've got an epidemic that's killed over 20 people. It is our obligation to stop that. So we can disagree on whether that's a good policy or not, but I want to keep things where they really are. Nobody's trying to stop feeding of the homeless. The feeding of the homeless continues. It continues throughout multiple locations in El Cajon. Nobody is trying to hurt the homeless. We're trying to prevent disease.
So, but people you have this big list of people who are allowed to go share food at the park.
No.
And they are also allowed to then put food on the ground. The birthday parties, the athletic events, they can all go do the exact same thing you're talking about the church doing, and you're still letting them do it. I don't think it's hepatitis A.
I think what you're misunderstanding is that list is places that we're continuing to feed people, not in the park, but in their kitchens, where they have food handling cards, where it's a clean, safe environment.
No, you have a list of the people who are exempt from the food sharing. It's on. I can hear it. Give me a copy. It's on the ordinance that you all voted on. It says birthday parties, athletic events, baptisms. You listed all of the exemptions to this ordinance.
Okay, let me pass this to staff. I'm not understanding.
Mr. Mayor and the City Council, there are exemptions of who can share food in a park. For example, a family getting together is allowed to share food, and there's this sense of shared liability when you do that. And so, as the mayor indicated, this is a temporary ban until the outbreak is declared a non-emergency. We do not think it'll be that much longer. In the meantime, we're actually working with the church community and the faith-based community, and as well as service providers, in developing a long-term policy that will present to the City Council and socialize for public discussion.
Graham, are the public health officials telling you it's going to be several years?
That's the first I've heard that.
Okay.
So long as you have an address, you're allowed to share food at the park. That's what that says.
You know, I think you are politicizing this.
No, actually read it. I'm a little disturbed that you didn't know what it said. You voted on it last time.
Mr. Mayor,
that's disturbing. How do you not know that?
Mr. Mayor, Bill, over here.
Yeah, go ahead, Steve.
To me, one of the reasons why I voted on it is because families, anniversaries, everybody knows each other. Everybody's familiar with each other. That's a different situation than an outside group.
So I guess my question
Excuse me. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm really happy to have a long civil discourse that goes till midnight. But I would really like you not to yell and talk from the audience. It makes this disruptive. We can't get anything done. I thank you. Go ahead, ma'am. I'm sorry.
Oh, well, and this was my question. So if I'm having my child's party at the park, I can share food with all of the kids there. What if one of the kids that's invited is homeless? Because there are lots of homeless kids. What if at the park, we see a homeless person, and the kids say, hey, can we give them some pizza and cake too? I have to say no, and then we're supposed to throw all the food in the trash can, and then somebody can dig through it to get the food out? That's legal? I don't see that that's preventing the spread of hepatitis A. I see that that's contributing to it. It would be much better for us to be able to share food with whoever. I mean, there's so many, like when you start logically breaking down all the scenarios that really do happen at the park, everyone's going to break this law. And it's also just targeting a group of people based on whether or not they have a permanent address. How are you judging who's homeless and who's not? Are we now walking up and going, well, you're kind of shabbily dressed and you have a big bag. Don't give that person food. But that nicely dressed person over there, by all means, offer them something.
Let me just,
That's what your law says.
I need to address what you said. We're talking about groups that their stated specific purpose is to go out and feed people in the park. We're asking these groups not to do that because public health officials have said you've got a crisis on your hand. If you want more people to die, continue that process.
Which public health official told you to stop sharing food? Just cite the source and I'll be happy. I'll go look it up.
This is a massive problem. We've got doctors from the county that are working with every city.
So is there a source or no?
You want to?
I'll look it up. I've been looking. I couldn't find a source that said you should not share, that you should have a food ban.
You know,
he's giving you the.
At this point, this is just becoming oppositional. I wanted to have a conversation where I can explain logically what's going on. I understand.
I understand your logic. I disagree with it, and I think it's full of logical fallacies.
Let's move on then. I appreciate it. Thank you.
And none of these horses were cleaned up after. They're all out They're all out in the parade right now, and they left all this shit all over all this horse shit all over the park over here, right? Wait, you forgot to pick up your shit. They're just leaving.